Amy, thank you for joining me on GB Talks.
Thanks for having me.
How has your morning been?
Yeah, good. Busy, but good.
What have you had on your plate?
My husband's playing golf, which is pretty standard for a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So just getting Louie organised and off to the grandparents so I can come and have some fun with you.
Did you ever join your partner in a game of golf?
I didn't. Funny you mentioned that. I went to a driving range with him a few weeks ago and I was not too bad apparently. So I think he's a bit nervous. I'll join him and upshow him a little bit.
The driving range is I haven't played golf either. I'm scared I'd get addicted to it. But the driving range is just so much fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's like my meditation. Just hitting something as hard as you can.
I get that.
Where's the driving range?
This one was down. No, this was down on the Mornington Peninsula. So it was a pretty cool place. Had some wood-fired pizzas after. It was a nice vibe. Yeah,
great. All right, before we get too deep into it, do you want to let the Shepparton people know who they are listening to?
Yeah, so I'm Amy Dann and I'm a nurse, a lecturer at the local uni here and a mum of a little 3-year-old.
Yeah. Have you always been in Shepparton or?
Yeah, well, no, yes and no. I grew up here and then like many 18-year-olds finished high school, I was pretty keen to get out and so moved away to study and I lived away working after I studied and in a few different places. So I lived in Geelong and Canberra before coming back here after I had Louie, so I only moved back 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What
did you move to those places for?
So Geelong took me there to study. So I went down there for uni and then just stayed there, found a good job and we really liked the lifestyle down there being at the beach.
Yeah.
So stayed down there for about 7 years and then Michael's job took us up to Canberra. So we lived up there for 3.5 years and I loved Canberra. We were both, probably not super ready to leave, but it was the right time to move back, yeah.
Yeah. How is studying to be a nurse?
It was good. It's still going. I am still studying, trying to finish off my masters at the moment. So, but yeah, it's not too bad. It's a lot of placement, which is like, on the job stuff. So that can be a bit grueling when you are trying to survive as well, because you obviously don't get paid for placement, but otherwise I enjoyed it. It's just a bit of work.
Do you think you should get paid for placement?
Yeah, I think you should get something. I think it's really hard. At the moment, I predominantly teach the third, final year nursing students here in Shep, and they have a huge amount of placement that they have to commit to. So I see the challenges that they face. So I think it's a hard one. I think I can see why they don't, because they don't have the responsibility. But it's a huge commitment out of their year.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks for the year, is that?
Third years have something like, it must be 12 weeks all up for the year. And that's Monday to Friday shift work. So it's hard to work another job on top of that. So
they do that for free?
Yeah.
Well, I would struggle to commit to that.
Yeah. So it's a big commitment. So there's a lot of people that will do nursing part-time just because the placement is just too much to try and do in one year, or in the 3 years, I should say.
Yeah, I didn't even think you were allowed to work for free anymore. I have placement kids come to the gym occasionally and I have to pay them chips, $5 an hour or something like that. But I still legally have to pay them. I can't let them work for free.
I think because it's an assessment as well, it's part of their degree. So it's it's not work per se. It's, they're learning. They're there to learn and to experience the industry, not necessarily work, even though they do get a lot of experience and actually get hands-on stuff, obviously,
Yeah. Can you tell me if this is right? It's a quote that I read, and I've been saying it lots recently, so you can just let me know. I've been saying, let's say you wanted to be a doctor, but you didn't get the ATAR to be a doctor, right? You could still be a nurse, and you do 80% of the work that a doctor would do. So it's not exactly what you wanted, but it's close, so you can have the dream job that you wanted. Is that correct? The nurses do about 80% of what a doctor would do?
Oh, now I'm getting into some like rocky ground
Okay.
there. Nurses do a lot there, obviously at the bedside. So there's a lot of like a lot of stuff that I think the people that might not know nurses don't know that you do. There's a lot of assessment and a lot of critical thinking that nurses have to do, that it's a lot more than just, you know, doing what the doctor says or giving meds. There's a lot of their own decisions that have to come. So yeah.
It would be hard having patients who don't want to do what's necessarily best for them, and I imagine there'd be cases where you would just let them get away with certain things, which enables that behaviour. Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah.
Like, is that something you see often in nursing?
Well, my field prior to moving back, I'd specialised in cardiac. So I worked in working with people that had cardiac issues, and predominantly in what's called a cath lab. So if anyone has to have a stent or a pacemaker or have had a blockage or something like that in their heart, they would come through us. And I saw a lot of people that came through because they had lots of lifestyle factors, so smoking and overweight, or their diet wasn't great, and they just kept coming back. You'd just see them every few years or every few months because they didn't make changes. So you certainly do come across people that do enable their poor health, I suppose, and it's just because of the world we live in now. So much of our health outcomes is based on our lifestyle choices. So
do you think working in that field has made you health conscious?
Oh, definitely, to a degree, yeah. I'm still definitely not perfect, but I'm very conscious of the effects that you know, things like smoking and long-term weight challenges, I suppose, would have, Yeah.
Smoking does not seem as popular as it was when I was a kid.
No, definitely not. Surely
that's going to die out soon. Great, so you've moved around a little bit, but how do you feel about Shepparton?
I love Shep. Like, it took a bit of adjusting to move back, but not anything because of Shep, just because Michael and I were probably not super ready, like I said, to move back. But I think it's what you make it. When I was 18, obviously wouldn't have said the same thing. I think a lot of people would agree, but I feel like my priorities changed, and for me, even though my career that I worked really hard for and everything isn't purely or solely available here, because there's no cardiac services that I did here, that sort of kind of I was okay with letting go of that, because for me it was more about being close to family and friends, and I think I get a lot more out of that than I would have if I lived far away still. So yeah, I think Shep is I think it's just what you make it. There's opportunities here, there's things to do, but it's just whether or not you want to take them.
100%. What would you rate it out of 10?
Probably like a 7. 7.5 or an 8.
What could get it closer to a 10?
The scenery.
100%.
Yeah, living in Geelong, being by the beach, and then going to Canberra, which is just surrounded by beautiful mountains, and there's always like a lot of outdoor stuff to do. That's the one thing that I really miss is being able to go for a walk and just seeing like a gorgeous view or something. It's just, that's the one thing I think Shep lacks.
I completely agree. I lived in Ballarat and Warrnambool prior to moving here, and just the town centre, the architecture, the old buildings, even like especially at Warrnambool, like they had the beaches, the dog beaches, the big playgrounds for the kids. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And in January they'd have a festival, where they have all the rides and stuff, and it was free for the whole month.
Wow.
Right, so it would just run for the whole of January. You didn't have to pay to go in, you had to pay to go on the rides and stuff, but you could just go down there for the night, and it was you're immersed in like families and people on dates, and you could just sit there and embrace it and be around.
What a great environment.
Great environment. Yeah. And I love Shepparton, but it is lacking in those areas.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think of the new buildings?
I like them. I haven't been to the art gallery yet, but I think that's a really good it's a pretty cool looking building, but I think it's a really good initiative, like there by the lake. I think it'll attract a lot of people, a lot more than the old building might have. So yeah, I think they're moving in the right direction. It's a bit sad to see not like the older buildings still around though. I think that adds a lot of character to a town, but
it's too far gone, so
yeah,
we have to move forward now.
Yeah.
What were your aspirations growing up?
Oh, I don't know. I always wanted to be like a teacher or a nurse, and funnily enough, I've kind of ended up in that to manage to do both. That kind of just fell about, but yeah, I think I just wanted to be happy and successful, and I feel like I've done that to what I wanted. Yeah.
Did you see yourself having a family?
Yeah. I always wanted to be a mum. That's probably one other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Why did you want to be a teacher and a nurse?
I don't know.
Did you like your teachers at school?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I think I like, I don't know, it sounds so silly. I like educating people. Like I like seeing the light go on and like when people get it. So being able to work at La Trobe and teach the nursing students, like it's obviously my passion with nursing, and seeing them progress from coming in and not really knowing much about the field or the industry and then leaving these like really knowledgeable, competent nurses is a really rewarding thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. What do you think is a better feeling for you? Learning something new or teaching somebody something?
Well, that's a good one. I think teaching somebody something. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's close, but I come to that conclusion as well.
It's very close. Yeah.
Yeah. No, great. So your life played out exactly how you wanted it?
No, not really. I don't think anyone's life plays out to exactly how they want, but yeah, I've definitely been throwing some curveballs here and there, but I'm happy with where it's at now. Yeah.
Yeah, great. How did you meet your partner?
We actually met at high school, so we're coming up 15 years together. So yeah, just friendship groups kind of collided in high school, and the rest is history, as they'd say.
Wow. Did he work up the courage to come ask you out face to face, or was it a MySpace message?
No, I think it was we were both very like, oh no, we're not real keen to date anyone right now, so we were just playing it real casual, and then 15 years later, I don't think it was as casual as we thought.
Yeah, wow. What tips would you give to someone hoping to have a successful relationship?
I think communication is the biggest thing, like good, open, honest communication. Yeah. Michael and I think are really lucky that we're both pretty open and honest with each other, and there's never like a time when one is sort of not comfortable to talk to the other about something. So I think that just makes you stronger and makes you work harder together, and makes the easy days good and the harder days easier to get through. Yeah.
Do you think that the communication is a skill that you develop by yourself or you've developed together?
A bit of both. I think obviously being a nurse, you have to have some level of good communication skills. So I think independently I've certainly improved from when I was younger. But I think we as a couple have also improved and grown in the way we communicate with each other. So I think they sort of work side by side.
How did you two negotiate the move from Geelong to Canberra, then Canberra to Shepparton? Because you, like you said, you had to give up your career.
Well, coming back here, I did. Canberra, I was happy to move up there with him. I was probably at a place where I was ready to, try something different. I stayed in the same job though, and it ended up being a really seamless transition. Coming back here, there was it was just the way that it ended up being. I'd already accepted that if we moved back to Shep, there was going to be a degree of my career that didn't continue. But it meant that we said we would move back if Michael got to continue in his field, which he did. So that was sort of the compromise, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So if you don't mind, how did he ask to marry you? I love these stories.
He's not a big romantic, so it wasn't there wasn't too many bells and whistles or anything. But we'd just moved to Canberra and maybe 2 months earlier, and we'd gone back to Geelong for the weekend for a friend's birthday or something. And yeah, he just took me to a spot that looked out over all of Geelong, and I was not expecting it at all, and just proposed there. So it was sentimental in terms of the location, but yeah, there was nothing too crazy about it, but it meant the world to me, obviously.
that sounds romantic to me. It's not overkill either.
No.
Yeah. Great. So you mentioned you had a 3-year-old son.
Yeah.
Was that something you planned or something that just happened?
No, yeah. We I think we both got to a point, like we had travelled a little bit and had done what we'd wanted to do, and felt like we were ready to add to the family and grow that and start doing things with kids. So yeah, it was definitely planned and on the cards. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your son?
Yeah, so Louie just turned 3 last week, and he's a cheeky little boy. He has a rare genetic condition called CDG, or congenital disorder of glycosylation. So he's faced with a few extra challenges than everyone else, but he's one of the happiest kids I know, and fills our lives with a lot of happiness, which is the main thing.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is CDG and what causes it?
Yeah, so CDG is, like I said, genetic. So unbeknownst to Michael and I, we're both carriers of this super rare genetic mutation. So we both have one mutated gene, and together that meant that Louie was affected and had the condition. So it's more or less, it affects everything at a really cellular level. So in really basic terms, it means that Louie has the inability to sort of put the protein and the sugar building blocks on at a cellular level together. So it's a really wide, there's a really wide variety of symptoms that come with it, and each person that has CDG might show symptoms in a different way, because it can affect every function of your body essentially, because it's really at that cellular level that it's happening. So yeah.
So even though you and Michael have the gene, you don't have any of those symptoms? No,
so we're unaffected, which means that it's a recessive genetic condition. So I've learned a lot about genetic conditions since having Louie and learning of his condition, but every one of us has between 3 to 5, I think it is, 3 to 5 genetic mutations in our DNA. They're just recessive, which means they're not dominant, and that means that we're not affected by them. But if you were paired with, like, your partner had the same one, together they have a chance to affect a child. So yeah, there's a lot of rare genetic conditions out there that people don't know until they've had a child with it.
Yeah. Can you recall how you felt when Louie was diagnosed with CDG?
Yeah, it was a pretty intense time. He had seizures, or seizures had started from about 3.5 months. So we'd spent, at the time of his diagnosis, I think we were up to like week 7 or 8 in the ICU in Sydney Children's Hospital. And they were just at a loss as to what had brought on these sudden seizures, what was causing them, and why we couldn't get on top of it. And in that 7 weeks, they'd just gotten worse and worse, and there was lots of it was a really, really hard time. That was probably it was the hardest, most challenging time with Louie, I think, because he was really unwell, and there was lots of days where we weren't sure if he was going to make it through the day, and he was just a whole new world for us. So the diagnosis kind of came gradually. They kept saying, we think it might be genetic, we think it could be this, there's these minor markers on some blood results, but we need to do further. And it took a full genome testing, so they looked at his whole DNA sequence and picked out this one mutated gene and said, yep, this is the one. So when they gave us the diagnosis, the prognosis was really poor with it as well. And so I think when I think about how I felt, it's because of the information that they gave us at the time and the prognosis they gave us. So they sort of said, okay, this is the diagnosis, this is the condition he's got. We thought it might be mild, but now that he's now been experiencing this for some time and it's not getting any better, it looks like he's going to have a more severe form of it. They more or less said the way he was at the time, he wouldn't improve on, and they said, we are happy to help you get home, but we unfortunately, statistically, he's unlikely to live past Christmas, and this was September. So the emotions I suppose I feel from that diagnosis are because at the time it was, this is what your son has, but also you're not going to have him for a very long time now. So that was really, really hard, and just a really challenging thing to process, because the grieving starts while he's still with you. And that's like a whole nother kind of type of grieving and type of emotion that I had never experienced before. But obviously he's outdone a lot of those statistics, and he's doing better than they expected, which is great, and it's not their fault. They're just working off the information they've got, and it's just so rare they didn't have a lot of information out there about it. But yeah, I think now I've accepted it, but that level of grief and that level of emotion that comes with getting a life-limiting diagnosis for your child doesn't sort of go away. You just learn to carry it a bit better, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like you said, they're only working with the information that they have. Do you think the doctors prefer to give you a less hopeful outcome, not to get your hopes up? Because my grandma, when she was in hospital, they came to me and said, you got to say goodbye now, she's going to die. But about a week later, she was back at home, and she lived for much longer than that. So that was like my experience with it. Like, the doctors are kind of telling me the bad news now.
Yeah.
But that never came to fruition.
I think so. And that's what Michael always said. Like, obviously he was still processing it too, but he kept saying they have to tell us like the worst case. Like, he's like, I think that for them, it's better for them to tell us you said, the least hopeful case, rather than say, oh, look, this is it, this is what it is, and he'll probably be fine, and this is what, you can expect your life to look like, and then it not turn out like that. So, I think they do sort of have to go with the evidence that they've got to say what the least, best outcome is, I suppose.
The 3 months leading up to Christmas, could you really appreciate your time with him, or was it you were just so upset that you were miserable and depressed? Like, that's how I'd feel if I heard that.
I think it was hard the first few weeks after, I suppose the first couple of weeks, it ended up kind of moving quite fast, because once we got the diagnosis, they were like, okay, well, now we know what we're dealing with, and we know that the seizures are not going to go away necessarily. Like, they're most likely something you're going to have to learn to manage. They said, we're happy for you to go home now, so we'll help support that. So the next couple of weeks were filled with, education on how to now use his feeding tube, because he was being fed through a tube, how to do his meds, how to manage seizures, what a seizure management plan would be. So at the same time as trying to process all that, we were also trying to process, like, okay, we're trying to get this new life sorted, where this is not how you think you're going to have what your 6-month-old is going to be like. And so I think it wasn't until we got home, maybe 3 weeks after that, that I really felt the sadness that came with that diagnosis. But 100% we were just taking in every day, and it gave us and it still does, it gives you a whole new perspective on life, and the things that we might have been a little bit stressed or worried about or focusing on just felt so just not important at that time. It was just all about spending time with Louie and making his life as good as it could be and enjoyable for him as it could be. Yeah.
How do you manage a seizure?
You just have to support them through it. So just make sure that he's not going to hurt himself. He's not near anything that he might knock and hurt himself. For Louie, he holds his breath when he has a seizure, so often we have to give him oxygen just to support him that way as well. But usually there's not a lot you can do unless it goes for an extended period of time, and then we have like medication that we can give to try to stop it.
Yeah. It's the same for an adult who's having a seizure. You just get everything away from them.
Yeah.
You don't try and hold them or nothing like that.
No, they're really hard to
They're very scary.
see. Yeah, because you can't. If you feel helpless, you can't do anything to stop it. You just have to be there for them. So, but we've just become. And our family have become very not desensitized. Michael and I feel like we have to a degree when they happen sort of like every now and then. We certainly feel them, and they weigh really heavy when he has waves or we call seasons, when he has like a bad season of quite a few. But everyone around us is really good at supporting Louie through them and knows what to look for and knows when he's having them and things like that. So.
Yeah, because somebody who's not in your situation or knows your situation would not know how to react to that if they've seen that, which would be overwhelming in itself.
Definitely.
Because you guys get out and do a bit.
Yeah, we try to. Yeah, that first 3 months we didn't do a whole lot. We tried to, but it was still such a daunting thing to try to leave the house with all the things that Louie needed. But now we are in a better position, and it's just our normal. So we try to get out and about a bit, but it's definitely still a level of anxiety when you leave and he has triggers. So when you know that there's like a chance he might have a seizure, it can be a bit more anxiety inducing leaving the house. But we definitely try to. Yeah.
What else goes into raising a kid with special needs? Is that the right term?
Yeah. Look, I think special needs is, it's one of those ones where I'm a bit like, I don't know. It's there. It's the way everyone refers to it. So I'm not like offended by it or anything. But I think there's a lot of people trying to sort of change the wording a bit more to things like additional needs or different needs or something like that. But yeah. I think it depends on the child's disability and the level of additional needs as to what goes into it. I mean, I obviously can only speak for Louie, or our experience with Louie, but he has extra things for everything. So he's got a PEG, so it's a feeding tube that goes straight through his belly into his stomach. So he has everything through that. So whenever we leave the house, we just have to be mindful of whether or not he's, got, does he need to go back on his feed soon? Have we got the feed with him? We have to make sure, we've got the pump and all of that stuff organised. You just have to, there's lots of medications to give and just lots of additional, I suppose, considerations that have to be made. Obviously, parenting any child, typical or not, there's challenges, and there's definitely hard times with any kids, but with kids with a disability or special needs, I feel like there's just extra challenges like thrown in there. Instead of like if Louie doesn't sleep, that's one thing, it's hard because you're like, okay, he's not sleeping and now I'm tired and things are hard. But for us, then it's like, okay, well, that's a trigger for him for his seizures if he's tired. So now we have to be mindful that he might have seizures, and it just adds another layer, I suppose, to it. I'm finding as Louie gets older, though, one of the biggest challenges, as in going out and about raising a kid, is accessibility. I find it hard when we go places, because people often will say, so how old's the child, just so we know, what seating to get or how much room to give you. And I'll say 3, and they're like, oh, no worries. So they'll just sit on the chair. No, sorry, actually he's in a pram, or, we have like an adaptive chair for him, like a wheelchair, and that we have at home. So we might have that out with us as well, and just things like that. And, we don't, he's getting too big now to carry all the time, so we can't obviously go to some places if there's a big walk and you can't use a pram. So accessibility is probably something that I'm learning more of now as he's getting bigger.
Yeah. Most people would be equipped to deal with it though. Like you wouldn't be turned away from anywhere or...
No, I don't think so. It can... No, I've never been turned away or anything like that. It can just get like a bit awkward when the pram is like getting in the way or it's a little bit pokey and like, you know, it's just there and people are seeing this like pretty decent sized kid sitting in the pram. I'm just very, I feel like, oh, they must be thinking,
yes,
why is he just not out? Like, why do they need that pram right in the middle of the space? Or, you know, can't they move it? It's in the way. Or, but it's hard because you kind of want to be like, no, I can't. Like, he can't walk, so I can't take him out. Like, this is his chair. But yeah, it's not too bad.
So how would you like that to be different?
I don't know, to be honest.
Do you think like people are being too judgmental?
Not necessarily judgmental. I think it's just really easy to assume,
yes,
like just to take a look at someone and go, oh yeah, okay, so I know everything about you now just looking at you. Whereas, because looking at Louie, like if you just saw him sitting in his pram, there's certain tells that he's not at the developmental stage that his age would be. But otherwise, there's no obvious features of a disability. So it's not something that people look at and go, oh, okay, that explains it now. I think people look at him and think, oh, like because a lot of people go, oh, that's cute, he's having a nap, is he? Oh, yeah, nice. But I don't think, and which is fine, like you can't look at someone and get the whole picture, but I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they just do look at someone straight up, and that goes for adults as well, and just make a judgment, and you just never know what someone's really, like what their story is or what's really going on just by looking at them.
Yeah. The people who are important to you know the story, and that's what's really important.
The people that know
like
me.
The people, yeah, who are close to you, like
yeah,
they understand Louie's
definitely
situation.
Yeah. I think we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the stuff we do if we didn't have supportive friends and family. Yeah.
You said that raising a kid with additional needs has added another layer. Can you elaborate on that as a parent?
I suppose for us, it's not necessarily just that he's got additional needs, but it's the raising a child with a life-limiting condition. Obviously, Louie's outdone some of his statistics so far, but there's still that constant, I suppose, cloud over us that there's, you know, the high probability that we will outlive him, as opposed to what, you know, natural process is. And so I think there's just that extra layer of emotions that come with that. And I think we're both, you know, have it relatively well managed now. But certainly in that first 12 months, it was really, really challenging, because you're just trying to navigate being a first-time parent, but you've got all the medical things to manage as well and get your head around, but also try and process your own emotions about what the diagnosis means and what this means for your life raising a kid, you know, even things like going on holidays and just like a lot of things that most people would, you know, they'd have a lot of considerations to take into account, but for us it's like a whole another thing, because we need to, you know, if we go on a holiday, we need to think, okay, well, now Louie's older, we actually haven't, with COVID, we didn't travel last year, but we haven't been on a plane since he's been like over that 2-year mark, where they then have to take up a seat, but Louie can't sit on his own, so I'm not really sure how we'll go about going on a plane with him. We'll probably have to look at taking like the car seat or something on the plane with him. And then whenever we go anywhere, we always make sure we know like where the nearest hospital is, you know, the nearest children's hospital, the nearest adult and children's emergency, you know, just making sure all of that stuff, it just adds this extra level of consideration and extra level of emotion and everything to like your just everyday decisions, I suppose.
Do you think you've handled this better because you're a nurse?
Oh, yes and no. I think some of it hasn't been as daunting because I know about it already, but it can have it definitely is a disadvantage as well, because you can often know then you understand more of what the ramifications are, what things mean, particularly when he was younger and he was in the ICU for that extended period of time. I found it more challenging and was wishing I wasn't a nurse at the time and didn't know, because I could see what was happening and I knew what it all meant. Whereas Michael's not even remotely close to the medical field, and he was very much like, I don't know what any of this means. And that level of sort of naivety I was jealous of, because I could, so I think it's made the transition to like a normal medical mum life easier, but it definitely has its disadvantages as well.
It doesn't sound like you've let, and you shouldn't, but it doesn't sound like you've let this affect your life negatively at all.
We've certainly tried not to.
Like you like you're talking about travel and stuff now. Like a lot of people wouldn't even entertain that.
And I didn't for the first 6 to 8 months. We didn't. I was going to say the first 12 months, but we actually did go up to the Gold Coast just after Louie was 1. So, but I initially was like, well, that's it. We're not travelling for a number of years now. Like, we just can't do it. It's just going to be too hard, and why would we? And then I think it was once that the shock of everything kind of settled down, and we moved back here. That was a really big help to our processing and our ability to get out and do things. And we realised we had huge support in both our family and our close friends, that we realised it was achievable. But we certainly tried not to let it affect us negatively. We still try to do as much as we can and always include Louie and make sure that he's getting something out of it. But there's I still think there's certainly been effects of it. Like, it's made probably our mental health a lot more challenging over the years. I know it was a lot. I had to work on mine a lot for the first 18 months or so, but we're trying not to let it get to us too much.
Yeah, of course. What other events have you done to raise awareness for CDG?
So we went to the Gold Coast. So that was came about that Michael and one of our good friends were keen to run the Gold Coast Marathon. And then it was actually one of our friends said, well, why don't we do it for CDG? And like, we can all get shirts and we could raise money for it. And we were like, yeah, let's do that. So we decided to make it the CDG Awareness Day event, but it was a few months after the actual day. And we called it the Run for CDG. And there was about, must have been about 14, 15 of us that went up to the Gold Coast, and all of us participated in one of the events, whether it was the marathon, the half, the 10, the 5K, everyone did something. And we actually managed to raise $14,000 for CDG Care, which is the global, global kind of support group that looks after families and kids with CDG and helps fund research and things. So that was really exciting, and we've managed to kind of carry that on each year. So last year in COVID, we did it on CDG Awareness Day, which is in May, and we just did it like a virtual one. So we got people to go out and do their run or walk or whatever and just film a little bit of it and send it through. And it was really exciting. Michael and I sort of drove around and met people, or waved and cheered at them from the car on the sidewalk with Louie. And it was a really, really fun day. And again, we sort of like at that point felt like, well, we were so blown away by how much we raised the year before. We're like, we just want to do this for the awareness of it. But again, I think we got to about 10,000 last year, which was unbelievable again. And that was also a big help with my father-in-law organised a wine drive as well. So organised bottles of wine with a CDG label, like CDG awareness label on them, and was selling them, and that was helping raise money as well. So yeah, we've done those, and then we have done a Giving Tuesday. It's like a thing in America predominantly. It's like the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So we've done a couple of those with Michael's workplace in Canberra and mine, where we just put on like a morning tea and just put out some info and encourage people to donate there. And yeah, we'll just do the CDG Awareness Day each year, I think. And really lucky that like our family gets involved and gets their workplaces involved. So GMCU last year got really involved, and everyone was wearing, my sister works there, so everyone was wearing green, and they had a big morning tea and raised a lot of money, which was fantastic. My dad's work gets involved. My mum and my other sister were at the hospital, and they would get their departments involved. So it's really nice to see everyone excited and helping us spread a bit more awareness about it. Yeah.
With all the medical advances, is this something that we'll have an answer to?
I'm not sure if it will be in Louie's lifetime, but I'm hopeful that there'll be that there's enough research that there will be something. I mean, obviously I would love for there to be some sort of cure in Louie's lifetime, but there's just so few people with it, and because it's a relatively young disease in terms of its diagnosis age, or not diagnosis age, discovery. Like, it was only discovered in the 80s, so and then people were only sort of diagnosed probably in the last 20 years or so, and a lot of those were already adults. So there's either a lot of information on adults because they were diagnosed late, or there's a lot of information on really young kids, like because they were diagnosed, as an infant. But there's still hasn't been enough time passed to get a full a full history of one patient from birth to adulthood to see what happens. So I think that there's lots of research going on out there for it, particularly in America and in Portugal. And so hopefully they'll have something, but it's just one of those things that comes down to funding as well. Yeah,
great. What do you have in the near future to look forward to?
Lots of things, I suppose, lots of little things, but I'm speaking at the World CDG conference in next month, so I'm pretty excited about that, just to be on a panel as a parent and talk about the diagnosis process and life after diagnosis. So that's a nice little achievement for me.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Will you be nervous for that?
Oh, very nervous, yeah. And it's being held in Portugal, and so the time difference, I think I'm speaking at like 2:45 in the morning or something on a Saturday morning. So even that, I'll be like up in it's via Zoom, so I'll be online in my dark, or I'll have to make it look like it's the normal time of day. But yeah, no, I'm really excited for that. It's a really good opportunity, and pretty honoured to have been asked to participate in it. So we've got our second on the way, so I'm pregnant with our second, so that's exciting for later in the year.
Wow. So with that, is there any testing or anything done to see if that child will have CDG? Yeah, so we did some testing early in the pregnancy to essentially do that to see if they were affected. Any children we have from now on will have a 1 in 4 chance of being affected with CDG. And we were lucky enough that this baby is not affected. So we'll have a unaffected boy or girl join us later in the year to add to the craziness. Can you see yourself having a big family? I used to, yeah, I really did. I wanted like a basketball team. maybe not a basketball team, but a few. I'm one of 3, and I've got lots of cousins, and I've always been part of big families, so I always wanted a big family.
I still do, but I'm very apprehensive as to how things are going to go, having and one child with all the additional needs that Louie brings and another. So hopefully I'll have it all down pat, and Michael and I'll have it down pat, that we'll be able to add when the time's right. But I'm just happy to be adding now.
Yeah, well, it feels like you've taken on the responsibility and the challenge very well. Like you're spreading awareness, like you're not just sitting around just dealing with it yourself, like you're trying to do as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm certainly trying. I think when we first got the diagnosis and we found out about it, we felt pretty isolated, and like there was not, like nobody else must know what this is like. And I've since learnt that there are so many kids out there fighting and battling little rare diseases, and families going through it. And I think I just want to make sure that, you know, anyone else that is going through it knows that they're not alone, even if that is just through raising awareness about Louie's condition, because there's obviously thousands of rare conditions. I just hope that someone doesn't feel quite as isolated as I did back in the day.
Yeah. Great. So we'll end on this one. Who locally inspires you?
It's a bit cliche, but I'd probably say Michael and Louie. I think Michael just, his determination just blows me away. Even if every challenge and curveball that we're faced with Louie, he just persists and keeps pushing through, and he's always so positive, and he's just, and he's really committed to the community as well, and raising awareness and everything. Like, I just feel like he can do it all. He's just a really good guy to have, and I'm glad I've got him in my corner with me. But Louie as well, because he's not fazed by any of this adversity that he's faced. Like, he's still happy, and he still finds the joy in so many little things. Like, I think it's really easy to get caught up in, you know, the challenges that life can bring you wherever you come from and whatever your story is. And Louie has had a really challenging start to life and has a challenging every day, but he's not, it doesn't faze him. He's just happy, he laughs, he just enjoys being around people. And I think that's just a big, that inspires me to keep pushing through when I feel the hard times hit. So,
Yeah, the blissful happiness of a kid. Like, it's you can't even get yourself into that state anymore. Like, I can't. It's only kids, and that's one of the ways they repay you.
Yeah,
for all the challenging times.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I really enjoyed this, Amy. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.